This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's December 17th, 2025. On this day in 1951, the singer and Broadway star Paul Robeson made a very special trip to the United Nations headquarters in Washington, D.C. Cameras probably followed him because he was a well-known performer, but music, theater, that had nothing to do with what he was up to that day. Photos show Robeson, who was black, accompanied by two women, also black. Each of them was carrying a stack of what looked like books. In fact, those women were Rosalie McGee and Josephine Grayson, widows whose husbands had been sentenced to death by all-white juries and executed for crimes they did not commit. And the books were copies of a lengthy petition signed by 100 intellectuals and activists from across the United States called "We Charge Genocide, the Crime of Government Against the Negro People." It was prepared by an organization called the Civil Rights Congress. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context. From Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. The reason the petition was so long was that the body of its text detailed hundreds of incidents, like lynchings, that showed the depths of discrimination, mistreatment, brutality, and violence that had been directed at African Americans since the end of slavery. On the same day, at a separate UN meeting in Paris, an officer of the Civil Rights Congress named William Patterson handed out copies to the delegates who were assembled there. An alumnus of Nashville's Fisk University, the civil rights leader W.E.B. Du Bois was supposed to accompany Patterson to Paris, but the American government wouldn't let Du Bois leave the country on that trip. When Patterson got back to the U.S., officials confiscated his passport. Robeson was blocked from international travel after that. All three men reported harassment from the FBI for the remainder of their lives. They had dared criticize the status quo. They had dared implicate government leaders in turning a blind eye to mobs in some circumstances, or participating in dangerously abusive bigotry in others. And worst of all, at least in the eyes of the powers that be at the time, they weren't just speaking up here in America. They were telling the rest of the world things that tarnished the image of the United States. During that trip to Paris, one of the American delegates to the meeting got upset with Patterson and accused him of attacking his own government. His response drew a careful line. He said, "It's your government. It's my country. I am fighting to save my country's democratic principles." Now, the reason why Du Bois was already barred from travel in the first place wasn't specifically related to that petition. He'd been a prominent figure since he first published his landmark books, The Philadelphia Negro, back in 1899, and then in 1903, The Souls of Black Folk. Those were major academic studies of how Black people lived, the inequities they faced, and the politics at play. White leaders didn't like what he had to say. Du Bois didn't let that stop him. He made a career out of speaking up. And even though he was up in years by the time 1951 rolled around, he was still as outspoken as ever. In February of that year, so about 10 months before he was barred from traveling to that UN meeting, he threw a giant party on his 83rd birthday to raise money for decolonization efforts in Africa. He also circulated a different petition, one that protested nuclear weapons. The government wasn't too happy with the African fundraiser, and it really, really didn't like the anti-nuclear stance. That was declared un-American and a form of communist propaganda. At the height of the Red Scare, that was enough to get his exit for the Paris trip blocked. The following year, Du Bois attempted to go to a peace conference in Canada. At that point, the State Department revoked his passport entirely. Eventually, his passport was returned, but it took years. In 1961, Du Bois traveled to Ghana, and while he was there, the State Department effectively annulled his citizenship. He was 93 years old, one of the great American thinkers of his generation. But he was one of the most outspoken Black men of the era, too. So this nation's government didn't want him. He died in Ghana 2 years later. The way American history is often taught in school, it's easy to think the Civil Rights era started from nothing in 1954, when the Brown v. Board of Education ruling called for school desegregation, or maybe in 1955, when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus. It's easy to think there weren't courageous leaders working for equality in earlier decades. The work and the action of people like Du Bois is left out of the story that is most often told. That story also tends to give the impression that the fight for civil rights ended in 1968, when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Because, of course, he's often the only leader who is explicitly name-checked. So once he was gone, well, who else are students supposed to think there was to keep things going? That limited narrative erases so much continued work that has happened in the decades since, and that continues on to this day. It obscures the perpetual need for growth and improvement, which is why the new WPLN investigation that we've been sharing on the podcast this week is so important. The debt is about the fight to secure fairness in state funding for the historically Black Tennessee State University. It's about the pressure that was put on TSU to sacrifice its Blackness. And while it starts around the tail end of the usual civil rights movement story that gets told, this narrative extends all the way to now. The debt makes it very clear that the work of the movement, the work that, in all honesty, stretches all the way back to the moment of emancipation, is still far from over. This is work that shouldn't have to be done. Nobody should have to fight so hard just to get what's supposed to be the minimum standard. But God bless the people who are out there doing that work still. In just a few minutes, because it's the midpoint of the week, we're taking a break from the debt to bring you this week's edition of What, Where, Wednesday. And that's coming up after the newscast.
Best journalism in the nation. That's an apt description for a lot of what you hear on WPLN News. The proof this spring is in the array of journalism awards coming in. The Supermajority podcast won 3 national contests. Our investigative reporting, partnered with ProPublica, was named some of the best education coverage in the country. And for arts and culture, This Is Nashville and our music journalism are being honored on the national stage. We're proud, and you can be too.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Tennessee's Department of Children's Services has not done enough to quickly investigate child abuse and neglect. That's the top finding from a state comptroller's report out yesterday. Looking back at the last 3 years, the report also found the agency lacking in several areas, from getting kids prompt medical care, oversight in residences, and detention centers. News Channel 5 reports that investigation comes as DCS faces 2 class action lawsuits on behalf of foster children and those in juvenile detention. DCS has been facing scrutiny over findings that children sometimes have to sleep in state office buildings for lack of emergency housing. This fall, DCS Commissioner Margie Quinn told state lawmakers, quote, "We just flat out have no other option." A correctional officer at Knox County's Juvenile Detention Center has filed a discrimination lawsuit against the county, the former superintendent, and 2 employees. Antonio Smith, who's Black, claims he underwent, quote, "severe and pervasive harassment and disparate treatment." The lawsuit says defendants made baseless allegations against Smith and threatened his job. The lawsuit comes after Superintendent Brian Bivens abruptly resigned. He had been appointed by the mayor in July after the former superintendent, Richard L. Bean, was forced out. Bean was the subject of investigative revelations from WPLN and ProPublica about sending kids to solitary confinement. Another recent state audit highlighted administrative issues with Tennessee State University's former leadership. But TSU's new president says the school is on track to resolve past problems. WPLN's Camelia Burris has more.
TSU President Dwayne Tucker says the school has exceeded its financial goals this year by decreasing budget deficits and increasing revenue. He credits a $96 million deal with the state this summer.
That funding has allowed us to invest in resources that can help us continue to our sustainability at Tennessee State University.
That agreement allows TSU to use those funds to support its operational needs over the next 3 years. This year, TSU decreased its budget deficit by $13 million, and Tucker says the school is on track to eliminate its deficit years ahead of schedule. This comes in light of the state's audit showing ongoing financial mismanagement at the school. The report, however, covers a period more than a year ago, before Tucker started as president. Some issues mentioned included erroneous financial statements and lack of oversight of federal programs, including student loans and grants. The report includes how TSU plans to address these issues. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Metro Legal has determined that an ethics violation complaint against Councilmember Rollin Horton should be dismissed. The complaint was born out of Horton's successful rezoning of the Nations, a neighborhood he represents. A group of opponents to the rezoning effort sought to recall Horton, but eventually abandoned that effort in favor of the ethics complaint. However, the city's Department of Law has decided that none of the allegations in the complaint would constitute an ethics violation. The final decision is left up to the Board of Ethical Conduct, who will consider Metro Legal's recommendation during a meeting today. The Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency is urging the public, especially hunters and bird watchers, to keep an eye out for signs of bird flu. Also known as avian influenza, the disease is highly contagious among birds and can be deadly for them. Humans can also be infected and become seriously ill if exposed to a diseased bird. Citing reports of snow geese infected with the disease in Arkansas and Mississippi, state officials have issued some recommendations. They say waterfowl hunters should change their outer layers of clothing and treat boots with a bleach solution before going anywhere with live chickens. Folks should take down bird feeders and cover bird baths if they're finding dead songbirds. The state recommends cleaning those as well. And anybody noticing dead or dying birds can report them on TWRA's website. Scientists at Oak Ridge National Laboratory won one of the most prestigious engineering awards this year. They designed a portable X-ray machine that can be taken underwater. WPLN's Caroline Eggers reports.
X-ray imaging is commonly used by dentists and doctors to see through flesh and into teeth. But Oak Ridge researcher Paul Groth says if a machine's energy is at least quadrupled, then
you can also see through other objects like metal and welds and see through pipelines and see into wires and cables.
Groth helped design such a device, but for underwater. It's small enough for divers to easily get imaging on a screen within minutes. That's a big deal for industry like oil and gas. Roughly 20,000 miles of seafloor pipelines are active globally. And with a new device, divers can examine and repair issues in real time that could cause spills, theoretically saving millions of dollars and significant pollution. It will help cut some pollution, because before this device,
all it was really available was to take a radioactive source and bring that down underwater with you.
And that was gamma radiation that posed risk for divers and marine life. While the invention is a unique blend of energy, physics, and national security, Grove says it's also notable for workplace safety. Just a very specialized underwater workplace. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
The Nashville Predators have another high-profile member joining the ownership group. Former Alabama football coach Nick Saban has purchased a minority stake in the NHL franchise. The announcement came yesterday from the chairman and majority owner of the Preds, former Governor Bill Haslam. The purchase is tied to Saban's company Dream Sports Ventures, which is also involved in 2 Nashville car dealerships. Joe Ely, the influential Americana singer-songwriter, has died. More than 50 years ago, the Texas-born Ely and 2 bandmates recorded their first album in Nashville under the name Jimmy Dale and the Flatlanders. The Tennessean reports that while it didn't fit in with the mainstream country of the time, it eventually became a cult hit. Ely's collaborations would later range from The Clash to Bruce Springsteen to the supergroup Los Super 7, with whom he won a Grammy. Ely died on Monday. He was 78 years old. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. You know, at this time of year, there are 1,000,003 holiday events that you can take kids to. But if you want a timeless classic that is also a little bit of a break from all the ho, ho, ho and holly jolly, well, Marquise can tell you about one.
I'm Marquise Munson here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What We're Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. From Thursday through Saturday, check out Kindling's very special holiday featuring the Muppets Christmas Carol at Dark Horse Theater. The Lemonheads with Aaron Ray performs at the Basement East on Saturday. Sunday night, Hearts is at the Pinnacle, and Time is Tight, a Nashville tribute to Booker T and the MGs, is at Vinyl Tap. Wrap up this week's listings with Snooper performing at the Inn on Monday. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events. This week for What We're Wednesday, we feature Charlotte's Web happening at the Nashville Children's Theater. The oldest children's theater in the country, going back nearly a century, providing professional theater to young audiences and ensuring that all Middle Tennessee area kids have access to the theater arts experience.
My name is Jenna Lee Houghton. I am the Executive Artistic Director here at Nashville Children's Theater. I also was the director of our production, Charlotte's Web, that is open now. Nothing, and I mean nothing, makes me happier than when a kid comes to see a show and decides they want more. And that was me. I saw my first show at 3 or 4 years old, and I was stuck. We offer classes, camps, workshops for all ages, 5 through high school and beyond. In fact, we have registration that just opened, and those spots go fast. And those are geared for everything. People who are really interested in music theater or comedy, if they're into creative, constructive play, a little bit more casual of what theater teaches us. We have something for everyone. And we have an amazing team of teachers and educators who love theater and they love our kids. Those teachers and those teaching artists are a big part of that passion that they bring to teaching these kids who have the spark of creativity within them. They're the superstars of this place.
There must be something more to us than you and me. It must be tangled up somehow with destiny.
The story of Charlotte's Web is classic for a reason, right? It has themes of friendship, of bravery, of finding who you are, and also finding just what makes life meaningful. And that's really what Charlotte's Web is about. It's the story of one curious little pig who starts off the literal runt of the litter. So the underdog or underpig, I guess we would say, of the story, and finds this group of friends, and one particular friend, Charlotte, the spider, again, considered an outsider by so many people when we think about, oh, I'm afraid of spiders. In this story, Charlotte's really the hero. And that's really what it's about, this friendship that forms between Wilbur, the runt of the litter who grows up to be strong and independent and some pig and terrific and radiant and humble, all the words that we see Charlotte describe them as. And it's really about, in this short little slice of life that we all get to live, what is it that makes it meaningful? And it's friendship, it's the relationships we make, and it's about bravery and kindness. And those are lessons that they're classic, they're timeless. So that's why the story, I think, remains an important part of so many people's childhood, and including this generation as well. If it's your first time, one thing to know is that this is an experience. So don't come right as the curtain time is about to start, because we have activities in the lobby that are all themed to the show. So we have crafts, we have adventures in the lobby that every kid can come be a part of, because that's really what theater is. It's the entire experience. From the moment you walk up to the building where we have photo ops, you walk into the building and you have these activities and you have this energy. That's what theater is about. And that's what we want kids and families to know. So the thing that we want people to know is that theater isn't some stuffy experience where you have to worry about kids making noise or wiggling. Wiggle welcome. Always at Nashville Children's Theater. You are welcome. We love to hear the giggles. We love to hear the little questions that come up. I love sitting in the back of the house and hearing the kids lean over and ask their parent, what does this mean? What is that? So if you think that you can't take kids to the theater, we're here to show you absolutely can. We also have something that we're very proud of, which is the sensory friendly room. And that is open for every performance. It's at the back of the theater with beautiful glass windows. So if you or your little does need to take a break away, step away to either calm or regulate, we have a full room where you can control the lights and the sound levels. There are fidget toys. There are all sorts of tools and equipment to just take that breather and still enjoy the show. And that's really what we're all about. Whatever and wherever you're coming from, this place is for you. You are welcome in the theater. We want you here.
For more information on Charlotte's Web at the Nashville Children's Theater and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What We're Wednesday.
Each night, when the lights go out, it can be found on the ground all around. Oh, what a ratly feast.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms that more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.